Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So for this episode, folks, we're going to be talking about some news that just came from Coach Dan Campbell as he was just on the podium. He was just talking with the media. And let's just call it for what it is. This news is not good. It's not good news because, once again, Lions fans are not going to enjoy hearing this. But it already seems that the injury bug is starting to, kind of strike a little bit. Now, I will say this. As it would stand, it's not Marcus Davenport. It's not Alex Anzalone. It's not anybody that is, potentially a starter. What we're looking at here is news that Dan Campbell announced that, 7th round pick, safety, Dan Jackson, is on injured reserve. Now, we don't know if he's going to potentially be coming back, when he's going to be coming back, if his season is already done. It could be. I don't know exactly how all the rules work as far as, him being on injured reserve in terms of training camp. I'd have to look that up myself. But it seems like that, yeah, you know what? As Dan Campbell said, he's going to be down for a while. And again, that's just something you don't want to hear, especially for a rookie. Because it's like, listen, these guys are coming in. They're trying to work their tails off. They're trying to make a good impression. They're trying to make the team. They're trying to do everything they can to help the team. And for a guy like Dan Jackson that, was starting to make some headway in camp, the fact that he's now on IR, again, not good news. But I'm going to say this. Probably the one bit of news that's even worse than that is the news about cornerback Enos Raikstraw. And the reason why that's not good news is because of the fact that, Raikstraw, I don't even know how to put this. Like, Raikstraw is really starting to fall into that Ife Melifonwu category, kind of like how he was early on in his career. It's like, you know what? Guy had a lot of talent, has a lot of talent, but the problem is that he cannot seem to figure out how to stay on the field. All last year, practically, we didn't see much of him because, that's right, he was on injured reserve most of the year. This year, ever since, pads got put on, it's been one day after another. We've been hearing all these different reports about how he's constantly getting hurt in practice. Originally, it was a chest contusion. Then I think it was something with a lower body injury. Now it's a shoulder injury. And it's just like, okay, dude, it's like, I get it. Football's a rough sport. I get it. Football's a violent sport. But part of your job as a football player is to find a way to stay on the field. And I understand the player can't control when their body is all of a sudden going to have a problem. A player cannot control when and if something on their body is going to fail, break, whatever term you'd like to use. But again, as the saying goes, your best ability in football is your availability. And the problem is that for as much as the Lions, drafted him in the second round, the, investment that they've put into him, so far, they're not getting that investment back. And when you consider the fact that the Lions have invested, more resources in the cornerback room in, bringing in ROCKED, bringing in Avonte Maddox, guys that can play both safety and also cornerback. You still have, obviously, Amik Robertson. You have Terry and Arnold. You signed DJ Reed. It's like, listen, that cornerback room, in fact, that entire defensive back room, it's loaded. And for a guy like Enos Raikstraw, it's like, listen, even though that you're a second-round draft pick, again, as the saying goes with Dan Campbell and the rest of everybody else in camp, your spot is not assured just because you're a high-round draft pick. Now, I'm not saying that the Lions are going to cut Raikstraw. That's not at all what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that the more time he spends on the sideline nursing and recovering from injuries, the worse it's going to get for him. The harder it's going to be for him to actually find a spot and a role on this roster. Now, again, we don't know if this is going to result in an injured reserve status for Raikstraw. We don't know that. All we do know is that Dan Campbell said very specifically that he's going to be down for a while. How long? Haven't the slightest or foggiest clue. It's just one of those things where it's like, well, obviously the Lions are checking with other people. They're trying to get second opinions, third opinions. They're trying to figure out, okay, what exactly are we dealing with here? What's the timeline? What's the timetable? How do we attack the rehab? How do we get him back healthy? Now, I will say this. Unlike last year, when the injury bug really hit the edge rushing room hard, it's a good thing that the Lions have invested what they have into the cornerback room and also into the safety room. Because you have to think about it here. They've got a number of guys that can, flip in and out of that either safety role or cornerback role, nickelback role, whatever term you'd like to use. Obviously, we know Brian Branch can do it. Obviously, we know Rock Ya-Sin is getting work in terms of the safety room. Obviously, we know Avonte Maddox has done it before. So it's like, okay, the Lions clearly have options to where it's like, hey, we can flex guys in and out of that safety role or into that cornerback role or vice versa. So one thing that I'm really happy about is that Brad Holmes had the wherewithal, had the ability to recognize, okay, cornerbacks are one of those positions where there's a likelihood you're going to get injured because, one, you're talking about guys that are dealing with typically bigger wide receivers. You're talking about guys that are going to have to, tackle on the edge for running backs, especially in how physical our cornerbacks play. So it's a good idea. It is a good investment to make sure that these guys have not only one, adequate backups on, on call, so to speak, but that you have guys that can also double down into certain positions. So in case it's like, okay, we're dealing with an injury here, we can plug this guy in, we shouldn't have a problem. And I think the Lions did a really smart job of making sure, hey, we bring in guys like Rock Ya-Sin and Avonte Maddox who can really fill into that role on top of what we already have with Brian Branch. And again, the way I look at it is anytime you get injury news like this where you're hearing guys are going to be down for a long time, potentially the whole season, it's never good news. Never good news because you obviously want the best for the player. You want to make sure that that player has a full, honest chance to not only, show what they can do out on the field, but you never wish harm intentionally on anybody. Doesn't even matter if it's your worst enemy. You don't wish harm on anybody. So for me, it's like, you know what? Yeah, this news about Dan Jackson, this news about Raikstraw, it's not good news. But the silver lining here is that, hey, you know what? The Lions have adequate reserves. The Lions have made sure that, hey, you know what? By losing these two guys for, however long they're going to be out, which is looking like a very substantial period of time, we have guys that are directly, either in front of them that we've already been preparing to kind of fill into those roles or positions, or we have guys that, hey, you know what? They've already shown they can fill that role. So it's like, you know what? Yeah, the injuries suck. The injuries are not good. But the Lions have adequate guys that can fill in, and it's not going to allow them to miss a beat. And for me, that's why it's kind of like, you know what? Yeah, this news sucks. It's bad news. But at the same time, there's something that you can take away from this is saying, hey, you know what? This isn't as bad as what it could be. And I know that's not exactly much of a consolation prize here, but when it comes to stuff like this, you have to find the good in everything. You have to find that silver lining. Otherwise, you're going to drive yourself absolutely insane with this whole process. And that's why, for me, I'm trying my best to, explain this in a terminology and also in a way to where it's like, hey, you know what? I'm explaining the news as it is, which, again, is not good, but also trying to find and trying to show everybody, hey, you know what? While it's not good, it's not terrible either. It's terrible for the player, it's bad for them, and I do feel sorry for them. But as far as the overall team dynamic, it's not as bad as what some people might want to make it out to be. But again, like I said, you feel bad for Jackson, you feel bad for Raikstraw, but Raikstraw, like I said, his whole situation is a much more different one than Jackson, because Raikstraw is dealing with a hell of a lot of competition in that defensive back room, and with him constantly being injured, not being out on the field, not being able to grow in his development, not being able to show the coaches what he can do, it really is starting to put a lot more pressure on him to try and perform. And it also kind of harkens back to what I know a lot of people have already talked about with not only Ife Melifonwu before, obviously he started to show up, and now I believe he's with the Miami Dolphins, if I recall correctly, but also with Levi Onwuzurike. It's like, listen, you have these high draft picks that you have a lot of expectation for, you have a lot of hope for, and they just can't seem to stay on the field because they're constantly injured. And again, you don't want to try and hold that against them, but at the same time, it's like, listen, we invested this type of resource into you. We want to see more. We need to see more. Otherwise, we can't justify keeping you around. And that's, I think, where this whole situation with Lions fans is becoming a very cumbersome topic, is because it's like, listen, it's not just the fact that the player is not out on the field and is not performing. That is a player that, we're expecting not only a return on investment from the resource that we put into him, but at the same time, that's somebody that we were hoping to see help us get into our goal for a Super Bowl. And when you start losing pieces, even, insignificant ones or moderately significant ones like Raikstraw and Jackson, it's like, hey, that does not help. And again, you can't blame the player for getting injured, but at the same time, it's one of those things where it's a double-edged sword. So for me, it's one of those situations where it's like, yeah, I feel sorry for the player, but at the same time, the logical side of things, the business side of things, the football side of things, where it's like, listen, don't really know how much longer we can wait for you to potentially do something before we might have to cut bait here. And that's what I'm specifically referring to with Raikstraw. Obviously, you can't say that with Dan Jackson because he's a rookie. And on top of that, he's a 7th-round draft pick. So it's like, hey, first and foremost, whatever expectations you had for him were pretty much on the low side, number one. Number two, he's already going to be, at best, a backup behind the best, safety duo in the entirety of the NFL. So it's like, okay, there's a little bit of a different dynamic between what's going on with Dan Jackson's injury and where his status is versus a guy like Raikstraw and his dynamic and injury as far as what it means moving forward. But I just wanted to talk about this because I know that when I watched it, I was like, okay, this is obviously something we need to talk about. Like I said, obviously I'm paying attention to as much news as I can possibly get my hands on. If there's something that comes out from, Tim Twentyman's observations or other observations that are coming from the evening practice today, I'll try and push that out as quickly as I can later on tonight, or I might save it for tomorrow morning. Kind of just depends on how late it comes out. But again, that's what I got for the moment. Again, not the best news in the world, but again, I'm trying to make sure you guys understand that it's not as bad as what some people might want to put it out to be. But anyway, folks, having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage you all to watch the next episode. But also, if you enjoyed the content, I want to ask for your subscription if I've earned it. But if you've subscribed and you have not done so, or if you've subscribed in the past and you didn't do so at the time, I also want to ask, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Hope everybody's got something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.